On a super hot day in Texas, cars on Highway 83 started moving really slow. But it wasn't because of a car crash. Something much smaller and wilder had made all the cars stop. A tiny baby bobcat, scared and stubborn, was blocking the road and wouldn't move away. Police officer Emma Johnson had seen lots of weird calls before, but nothing like this. When she got closer to the shaking little animal, she knew it wasn't just lost or hurt. It was trying to tell them something important. And when she saw the shiny metal thing stuck to its leg, she knew for sure. Somewhere far away, there was a mystery waiting for her to solve. What could a wild bobcat possibly be trying to show them? And why did it look like it was waiting for help? What started as a normal highway patrol job would soon turn into a life-or-death mystery that nobody saw coming. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Also hit that notification bell so you won't miss any new stories. The summer sun was beating down hard on Highway 883 in West Texas. It made the road look wavy and shimmery as far as you could see. Cars and trucks were moving normally, going north toward Abilene or south to San Angelo. The people inside had no idea about the drama happening on the side of the road. Police officer Emma Johnson fixed her cowboy hat to block the bright sun. She squinted at the computer screen in her police car. At 34 years old, she'd been working for the Texas Department of Public Safety for 11 years. Usually, animal calls weren't super urgent, but something about this one felt different. Reports about a small, mean animal messing up traffic was something she couldn't ignore. Dispatch, this is car number 247. I'm going to the animal problem at Highway 83, mile marker 143. I'll be there in 3 minutes, she said into her radio, slowing down as she got closer. Got it, Officer Johnson. Just so you know, we've gotten more calls. People are saying it looks like a baby bobcat acting really strange, came the reply. Emma got more interested. In her experience, animals usually ran away from highways, not toward them. Something wasn't right. She saw the mess before she got to the mile marker. A bunch of cars were pulled over on the side of the road. Drivers were standing outside their cars, pointing and taking pictures with their phones. Emma pulled up behind the last car with her flashing lights on to warn other drivers about the danger ahead. When she got out of her car, the hot Texas air hit her like a wall. She fixed her police belt and walked over to a middle-aged man wearing a faded Dallas Cowboys shirt. He seemed to be telling others to stay back. Good afternoon, sir. I'm Officer Emma Johnson from DPS. Can you tell me what's happening? She asked. The man wiped sweat from his face. Ma'am, there's a baby bobcat over there, he said, pointing toward the middle part of the highway. It's been trying to cross for about 20 minutes now. It runs out, then comes back. Almost caused a big crash when a big truck had to brake hard to miss it. Emma nodded, her trained eyes looking around the area. Did anyone try to get close to it? No, ma'am. It's a wild animal and all. Plus, he stopped for a second. It seems upset, like it's trying to get our attention or something. Never seen anything like it. Emma thanked the man and walked carefully toward the middle of the road. Her hand naturally went to her gun. She'd dealt with hurt wild animals before, and a wounded predator, even a young one, could be dangerous. Then she saw it. A small bobcat kitten, only a few months old. Its spotted fur was dusty from the roadside dirt. It was walking back and forth nervously at the edge of the middle section, making small, quick movements toward the road before backing away when cars came by. Emma stayed far away, just watching. There was something weird about how it was acting. This wasn't an animal just trying to cross a road randomly. It seemed like it had a purpose, almost frantic in what it was trying to do. She lifted up her binoculars to get a better look, and that's when she saw it. A small device attached to the cat's back leg with what looked like a blue marker of some kind. The bobcat wasn't completely wild, or at least not totally. Emma went back to her police car and called the local Fish and Wildlife office. Within 20 minutes, a white pickup truck with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department logo pulled up behind her car. Dr. Mike Rodriguez got out. He was a thin man in his 50s with sun-damaged skin and sharp eyes that noticed everything. He'd been the area wildlife expert for over 20 years, and if anyone knew what to make of this, it would be him. Dr. Rodriguez, Emma said, reaching out her hand. Thanks for coming so fast. Call me Mike, he said, shaking her hand firmly. Dispatch said something about a tagged bobcat. That's unusual enough to get me moving. Emma told him what happened as they walked toward the middle of the road, being careful to move slowly and not seem threatening. There, she pointed. See the device on its leg? Mike lifted his own binoculars and adjusted them. Well, I'll be darned, he said quietly. That's not one of ours. What do you mean? Wildlife services use specific tracking collars, usually around the neck. This is something different. He kept looking. There's a blue marker attached. Almost looks like. He trailed off, his forehead wrinkling with worry. The bobcat saw them, and instead of running away, it moved closer. It stopped about 30 feet from them and made a small urgent sound. Then it turned and took a few steps toward the forest next to the highway, looking back at them. It wants us to follow it, Mike said, amazed. Like Lassie? Emma said, not really believing it. I know how it sounds, but I've worked with wild animals for 25 years, and I've never seen a wild bobcat act like this. He squinted at the blue marker. That tag. Can I borrow your binoculars? Mine aren't as strong. Emma handed them over, and Mike looked really hard at the device. There's a number on it. RW7734. His face went a little pale. Emma, that's not a wildlife tag. That's an emergency location marker. They usually give those to hikers in certain parks. Why would a bobcat have a hiker's location marker? Good question. Let me make a call. Mike went back to his truck and came back 5 minutes later looking worried. I just talked to the ranger station at Fortress Ridge State Park. They've had a missing hiker since yesterday. Robert Whitley, 42 years old, experienced outdoorsman. He checked in for a 3-day solo hike but missed his scheduled check-in last night. Emma's police instincts kicked in. And the marker number matches? RW are his initials, and 7734 was his campsite registration number. They both looked at the bobcat, which was still waiting, occasionally making that same urgent sound. This doesn't make sense, Emma said. How would a bobcat end up with a hiker's marker? Mike's face was thoughtful. There might be an explanation. Let me check something. He pulled out his tablet and tapped through several screens. Here. Ranger records show that Robert Whitley is a wildlife rehabilitator from Austin. He specializes in big cats. Emma looked at the bobcat with new understanding. So this could be his rescue? Maybe he was tracking it as part of getting it ready to go back to the wild? It's possible. But if that's true, why is the bobcat here and Robert isn't? The scary thought hung between them. The bobcat made another sound, more insistent this time, and took several more steps toward the forest. Emma made a decision. I'm going to follow it. If there's any chance it knows where this hiker is. I'm coming with you, Mike interrupted. If Robert is hurt, we might need medical supplies. He hurried back to his truck and came back with a backpack. Basic first aid, water, and emergency food. Standard search and rescue kit. Emma radioed dispatch to update them. We've got a possible missing person case connected to the animal incident. Dr. Rodriguez and I are going to investigate. Requesting backup units and search and rescue on standby. Copy that, Officer Johnson. Be advised, nearest backup is 30 minutes out. Search and rescue has been notified but will wait until you confirm. Understood. Understood. We'll be careful and keep radio contact. The bobcat, seeming to sense their decision, turned and trotted toward the trees, looking back every so often to make sure they were following. Never thought I'd be following a bobcat into the woods, Emma muttered as they crossed the highway, telling the bystanders to clear the area. Nature has a way of surprising us, Mike replied, especially when humans get involved. As they went into the forest, it got noticeably cooler under the canopy of oak and juniper trees. The bobcat stayed about 50 feet ahead, visible enough to follow but keeping its distance. It's staying on a clear path, Mike observed. That's another sign this isn't typical behavior. Wild bobcats, even partially rehabilitated ones, would use more cover. Emma nodded, her eyes scanning the ground. There, she pointed. Boot prints. Recent ones. Mike knelt down to look at them. Good eye. These are fresh, maybe a day old. Men's hiking boot, probably size 11 or 12. They kept following the bobcat, which kept its steady pace. About a mile into the forest, they came to a clearing where the plants had been messed up. Broken branches, flattened grass, and scattered personal items. A water bottle, a torn backpack strap, and most worrying, spots of what looked like dried blood on several leaves. Someone came through here in a hurry, Emma said, her hand moving automatically to her gun. Or fell, Mike added, pointing to a steep drop-off at the edge of the clearing that they hadn't seen right away. The bobcat had stopped at this point, pacing anxiously and making that same urgent sound they'd heard earlier. It approached the edge of the drop-off, then looked back at them expectantly. Emma and Mike looked at each other, then carefully made their way to the edge. Below was a ravine about 30 feet deep with a small stream running along the bottom. And there, partially hidden by a fallen tree, was a human form. Robert, Mike called out. Robert Whitley. The figure moved slightly, raising an arm in what might have been a wave. He's alive, Emma said with relief. Then into her radio. Dispatch, we found the missing hiker. Ravine approximately 1 mile east of Highway 83 at mile marker 143. Subject is alive but injured. Requesting immediate medical evacuation. Copy that, Officer Johnson. Search and rescue is mobilizing. ETA 45 minutes to your location. Emma looked at the ravine. It's not too steep. We can make it down there. I'll go first. I've got the medical supplies, Mike offered. They carefully made their way down the slope, using trees and rocks for support. The Bobcat surprised them by finding its own path down, moving with the natural agility of its species. When they reached the bottom, they found Robert Whitley conscious but clearly in trouble. His leg was trapped under the fallen tree, and his face was pale from being outside too long and not having enough water. But when he saw the Bobcat approach, a weak smile crossed his face. "Nova," he whispered. "Good girl?" The Bobcat, Nova, approached carefully and nuzzled against Robert's outstretched hand. Mike immediately started checking Robert while Emma gave him water and radioed in more detailed information about his condition. Compound fracture of the right tibia, possible concussion, dehydration, Mike reported, but stable. "Robert, can you tell us what happened?" Emma asked. Robert took a shaky breath. "I was tracking Nova. She's part of my rehabilitation program, ready for her final wilderness test before release." He paused, wincing in pain. "We were doing well until yesterday evening. There was a sudden storm. Lightning struck a tree nearby. Nova ran away, which is natural, but the same lightning weakened this tree." He gestured weakly to his trapped leg. "I was following her trail when it fell. Couldn't reach my emergency beacon, so I attached my location marker to Nova's tracking harness and told her to find help." Emma and Mike looked at each other in amazement. "You trained a Bobcat to find help?" Emma asked, not believing it. Robert managed a small laugh that turned into a grimace. "Not exactly. Nova was found as a very young kitten, raised around humans before I got her. Part of her rehabilitation was learning that roads mean humans. When she's frightened, she still thinks roads equal safety." His voice filled with pride. "I wasn't sure it would work, but I hoped she'd go to the road and someone would notice her tag." Nova had settled next to Robert, her spotted body pressed against his side, watching the newcomers with careful eyes. "That's incredible," Mike said, applying a splint to Robert's leg. "You essentially improvised an animal search and rescue." "I had faith in her," Robert said simply. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. The search and rescue team arrived with proper medical equipment and a stretcher designed for ravine extractions. As they worked to free Robert's leg from under the tree, Nova stayed nearby, watchful but not interfering. Emma found herself fascinated by the bond between man and animal. It went against everything she thought she knew about wildlife. As the rescue team prepared to transport Robert, he called out weakly, "Nova, please, someone needs to look after her. She's not ready for full release yet." Mike stepped forward. "I'll take personal responsibility for her until you're back on your feet, Robert. You have my word." Relief washed over Robert's face as he was lifted onto the stretcher. "Thank you," he whispered. "Her carrier and supplies are at my campsite. Fortress Ridge, Site 7734. We'll find it," Mike assured him. As Robert was being carried up the ravine, Nova tried to follow, making small distress sounds. Emma, acting on instinct, knelt down to the Bobcat's level. "It's okay, girl. He's going to be all right. And you did good. Real good." Nova looked at her with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand more than any wild animal should. The story of Robert Whitley and Nova the Bobcat made local headlines the next day. The center was situated on 20 acres of land outside Austin, a series of modern buildings surrounded by large naturalistic enclosures. Emma was greeted by a young volunteer who led her to a sunny room where Robert Whitley sat in a wheelchair, his casted leg propped up on a stool. "Officer Johnson," he smiled, extending his hand. "It's good to finally meet you properly. Last time I was a bit indisposed." Emma laughed, shaking his hand. "Call me Emma, please. And you were handling a compound fracture better than most people handle a paper cut." "Adrenaline is a wonderful thing," Robert chuckled. "And knowing Nova succeeded, that was better than any painkiller." "How is she?" Emma asked. Robert's face lit up. "Why don't you see for yourself? We're about to do her afternoon training session." He wheeled himself out to a large enclosure where Dr. Rodriguez was already waiting. Emma was surprised to see him there. "Mike's been coming down twice a week to help with Nova," Robert explained, noticing her expression. Says he's never seen anything like her and wants to document her rehabilitation process for a research paper. Mike greeted them warmly. Emma, good to see you again. You're just in time for the show. Inside the enclosure, Nova was exploring, her movements graceful and precise. She'd grown noticeably in the weeks since Emma had last seen her, her kitten proportions giving way to the more defined musculature of adolescence. She's getting big, Emma observed. They grow quickly at this stage, Robert said proudly. And she's thriving. The experience hasn't seemed to set back her rehabilitation. If anything, it's given us new insights into her cognitive abilities. Mike opened a small gate and they entered a protected observation area within the enclosure. Nova immediately noticed them and approached, focusing particularly on Emma. She remembers you, Robert said with surprise. Is that unusual? Emma asked. Very. Bobcats generally don't differentiate between humans unless they've had extensive contact. But Nova seems to recognize you specifically. Emma felt a strange sense of connection as the bobcat regarded her with those intent golden eyes. What happens to her now? She asked. Robert exchanged a glance with Mike. That's actually become a complex question. Nova's case has challenged some of our assumptions about rehabilitation. Her ability to navigate between wild instincts and human interaction is unique. The traditional approach would be to minimize human contact and eventually release her back into the wild, Mike added. But given her demonstrated capability, several researchers, including myself, have proposed an alternative. Robert wheeled himself closer to the enclosure fence. We're developing a new program. Wildlife ambassadors. Animals that, for various reasons, occupy a space between wild and domesticated. They can teach us about their species while helping with conservation education. And Nova would be your first ambassador? Emma guessed. She's a perfect candidate, Robert confirmed. She has wild instincts but has formed selective bonds with humans. And after her role in the rescue, the public is already invested in her story. They watched as Nova investigated a series of enrichment puzzles placed around the enclosure, demonstrating problem-solving skills that impressed even Emma's untrained eye. The rescue wasn't just a lucky coincidence, was it? Emma asked. You really did train her. Robert shook his head. Not in the way most people assume. You can't train a bobcat like a dog. What I did was work with her natural instincts and create associations. Roads mean humans. Humans mean help when distressed. The tracking device means me. He smiled wryly. I honestly didn't know if it would work. It was a desperate attempt. Well, it saved your life, Emma said. And changed hers, Robert added softly. The publicity from the rescue has brought in enough donations to fund our ambassador program for the next 3 years. We're building a special facility where visitors can learn about native Texas wildlife through animals like Nova who can't be fully released. Speaking of publicity, Mike interjected. The governor's office called this morning. They want to present both of you with a special commendation at the State Conservation Gala next month. Robert looked embarrassed. I told them Nova deserves the award, not me. I believe their exact response was that they don't have a protocol for giving state honors to bobcats, Mike laughed. But they are using Nova's image on a new wildlife conservation license plate, so there's that. Emma smiled, remembering the small, desperate bobcat that had blocked traffic on Highway 83 just a few weeks ago. Who could have imagined that such a creature would save a life and potentially change how people viewed the relationship between humans and wildlife? As if sensing her thoughts, Nova approached the fence where Emma stood, making a soft chirring sound that seemed almost like a greeting. Would you like to feed her? Robert asked, offering Emma a pair of long tongs with a piece of meat secured at the end. Emma hesitated, then accepted the tongs. Under Robert's guidance, she extended the meat through a small feeding port. Nova took it delicately without any aggression, then sat and calmly ate while watching Emma with those intelligent eyes. I never thought I'd be this close to a wild bobcat, Emma admitted. She's teaching us that wild isn't as simple a concept as we once thought, Robert said. There's a spectrum of behaviors and adaptations. Nova is helping us understand that the line between wild and tame isn't as clear-cut as we imagined. 6 months later, Emma stood in the crowd at the grand opening of the Texas Wildlife Ambassador Center. Her department had assigned her as their official representative, but she would have attended anyway. She needed to see how Nova's story had evolved. The center was impressive, with naturalistic habitats designed to give the animals space while still allowing visitors to observe them. Educational displays explained the unique circumstances that had brought each animal to the ambassador program. Injuries that prevented release, imprinting that made wild living impossible, or in Nova's case, exceptional cognitive development that created a unique bridge between wild and human worlds. Nova's habitat was the centerpiece of the facility, a spacious enclosure with rocks, trees, and a small stream designed to mimic her natural environment while allowing her to interact with researchers and participate in educational programs. Robert, now fully recovered, led the ribbon-cutting ceremony, sharing Nova's story with the assembled crowd and media. When he mentioned Emma's role in the rescue, he insisted she join him at the podium. Officer Johnson represented the best of human compassion that day, he told the crowd. She didn't dismiss a mere animal as unimportant. She recognized intelligence and intent, even when it came in an unexpected form. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed to tour the facility, Robert took Emma to a special observation area where they could see Nova up close. "She's become quite the celebrity," Emma observed as the Bobcat lounged regally on a rock outcropping, seemingly unbothered by the admiring visitors. "Yes, but more importantly, she's becoming an ambassador for her species. People who see her, who hear her story, they're donating to conservation efforts, supporting habitat preservation." Robert's voice filled with quiet pride. One Bobcat has done more for Texas wildlife conservation in 6 months than a decade of traditional campaigns. Emma watched as Nova stretched and repositioned herself, those intelligent eyes scanning the visitors before settling briefly on Emma with what almost seemed like recognition. "Do you ever wonder what she's thinking?" Emma asked. Robert smiled. "Every day. But I've learned to respect the mystery. Nova reminds us that animals aren't just simplified versions of humans. They're different, complex in their own ways." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the center, Emma found herself reflecting on how a routine call about an animal disrupting traffic had cascaded into something that changed so many lives. Robert's, Nova's, her own, and now potentially thousands of visitors who would come to learn about the delicate balance between humans and wildlife. "You know," she said finally, "in 11 years of police work, I've never had a case quite like this one." Robert laughed. "I should hope not. Once in a lifetime is enough for me." They watched in comfortable silence as Nova, the Bobcat who had once desperately tried to get human attention on a busy highway, now commanded it effortlessly. Her very presence was a testament to the unexpected ways that humans and animals could impact each other's lives. In the fading light, as visitors reluctantly began to leave, Nova rose from her perch and approached the observation glass where Emma stood. For a moment, those golden eyes met hers, and Emma felt again that inexplicable connection, a bridge between two worlds, wild and human, each with lessons to teach the other. It was, Emma thought, a fitting end to an extraordinary story, and perhaps the beginning of many more.